how restrictive is it? And if it's too restrictive, how sustainable is it really over the long term?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Better Basics podcast. Dylan, it's one of my favorite weeks of the year. It's 4th of July week. Happy Independence Day, man. I love this time of year so much.
Me too, man. Do you got big plans?
No. I'm taking the actual day off. Probably take my son down to the parade, and then maybe we're just gonna dick around, have fun outside until it's time for fireworks. It's just gonna be a great day.
Sweet.
I'm going
Milwaukee
to
Milwaukee canceled their fireworks. Did you hear about this?
know, is it like a smoke thing or like
No,
an environmental
financial.
thing?
Financial.
Financial. Oh, that's bad.
It's hundreds of thousands of dollars to put on the fireworks show. Like I want to say close to 400,000.
Well, they're known for doing a big one.
Yeah, it was nuts in the past. But yeah, no fireworks this year in Milwaukee.
Damn. All the fireworks up here are full on happening. Have I ever told you I about my 3 hot dog theory?
Free hot dog?
3.
No, I don't know anything about it.
So, I've been developing this theory for years now, and it usually comes into play, uh, right around this time, and it is that it's really hard to have a bad day, maybe even impossible to be having a bad day when you've eaten 3 or more hot dogs.
You love hot dogs, though.
What I just like, think about the days in your life where you've had 3 or more hot dogs.
The day is great not because you ate 3 hot
I
dogs.
did not say that. That's not
You
what
ate
it's a
3 hot dogs.
correlation.
No, I'm just putting this together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Like
The day
the
is
days
great.
where you are able to have 3 hot dogs
Are great days.
are great days. Like, it's
Yes, I
a
like that.
tailgate day, maybe it's opening day.
Yeah.
It's just an
Dollar hot
all
dog
around
day
great
at
day.
Miller Park, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just something to think about.
Is there is it a bell curve? Like, what about 5 hot dogs?
Yeah, yeah, there's probably a point after the 4th or after, like, the 5th one where, it probably starts going back down to pretty depressing day, but I haven't gotten there yet, so,
Alright,
um,
man. Well, I hope it's a 3 hot dog weekend for you.
I appreciate that, man, thank you. So for the hot topic today, we talked about one way to cure depression. Let's talk about a recent study. I think the first article that I saw on this came out back in February, but it says that a new study was done that shows that dancing is the best cure there is for depression. How about that?
Nuts, man. Yeah. It's a it's a meta-analysis, so it looked at 218 different studies, with a cumulative total of 14,170 participants, and it was looking at all these different methods for, um, eliminating I don't know the right language here, to reduce the symptoms of depression,
Right.
let's say. And everything from psychotherapy to exercise to, antidepressant medications like SSRIs. And yeah, dude, dancing came out on top.
Yeah, dancing came out on top by a landslide. Walking slash jogging came out second, but pretty much the really interesting thing, and not surprising, but it is interesting that this information's actually come out, is that pretty much all forms of exercise and movement performed better than SSRIs, which for people that might not know, those are like your antidepressants like Prozac. That's an SSRI. Um, it's incredible. Now I don't know so much about how much it requires, but I mean, it's got to be encouraging. Like, just move your body a little bit. And if you are suffering from these depressive symptoms, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to go away, but it's certainly going to help. It's not going to hurt.
Yeah, this isn't to suggest that SSRIs are bad. I think one of the most interesting findings of the study is that exercise plus SSRI
Yeah.
came out way ahead of an SSRI alone.
Hmm.
So, if you're a person who's on these drugs because, it's the course of action as recommended by your doctor, adding exercise to them significantly improves the outcomes related to depression. So that's kind of neat. And strength training's way
Yeah.
up there, yoga's way up there. I mean, things like cognitive behavioral therapy are way up there, but all of these things are above SSRIs
Yeah, the other
alone.
thing that I really liked about this was it looked a little bit at gender as well. So in women, it showed that things like strength training and cycling were some of the more effective things, apart from the dancing and walking slash jogging. And then for guys, they seem to be more affected by things like yoga, tai chi, aerobic exercises, and then aerobic exercises along with psychotherapy. So for women, it was things like do hard shit, lift heavy shit. For
Hmm,
guys, it was like, just move your bodies and
oh,
talk to
shit.
somebody.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it really does. So again, it's not like this is it's certainly not medical advice for anybody that's taking antidepressants, but damn, like if depression is something that you're suffering from, this has got to be really encouraging, because it shows that you do get to have some say over it. And it's not going to, make everything go away and magically make everything better, but by introducing things, something as simple as dancing can have the most effect over these depressive symptoms. So it's a really, really cool study.
Do you dance?
Dude, I am ever since having a kid, I mean, you've known me for a long time, and I've always been a two left feet guy,
You are?
no hips whatsoever,
None.
really stiff in the hips. But ever since having a kid, it has really brought out the silly in me, and that has led to a lot more dancing. I've done more dancing in the last couple of years than I have in the rest of my life combined. So yeah, I'm definitely not a dancer, but I am now very pro dance.
I've always had this theory that like I can drink as much as humanly possible during a wedding and never hungover the next day. And I always feel good, and I wonder if it's because I danced so much.
Yeah,
Somebody
you're
should
sweating
study
all the
that.
booze out.
Sweating the booze out, but man,
Oh, you think
that's
you
what
think that it's raising these feel good
yeah,
hormones in your
right,
body.
maybe.
Like, we need to study this, man.
I think
We got
so.
to study this.
Yeah,
I like it.
pretty cool.
It's a good theory. All right. Let's transition to the main topic of the day, our main course, which is the pros and cons of popular diets. So, if you tuned in last week, Dylan popped into the old Google machine some of the top fitness trends of 2024. He's done the same thing with diet trends, and we're just going to go through them, tell you uh, some of the pros, some of the cons, what we think about it, and ultimately, you will know how we feel about trendy diets by the end of this.
Yeah. So the majority of the time, the reason a person is looking for a diet is because their ambition is to lose weight. And so I think there's maybe some high level themes to introduce before we discuss the different diets that are worth pointing out. The first of which is pretty much all of these are going to show some sort of a weight loss benefit, at least in the short term. And it's really easy to attribute some sort of magic to them that ultimately leads to that weight loss benefit. But almost in every case, the reason that weight loss works in the short term with these is because of restriction of calories. So the reason that these gain attention, the reason that the short-term studies show success for weight loss is because something about them causes or restricts the person through a certain restriction of food to reduce their calories. And reducing calories puts you in a calorie deficit, and that's how you lose weight. So none of these are like silver bullets. None of them are magically healthy, even. Um, and all of the studies that show that these things work well are done over very short periods of time. So while they may be effective in the short term, we know that almost on the whole, dieting in general is an incredibly unsuccessful thing to do. They really don't work. Adherence is really what's most important. How restrictive is it? And if it's too restrictive, how sustainable is it really over the long term? The question you should be asking yourself when you're considering any diet really is, can I eat like this for the rest of my life? Because
Yeah.
even if it works for you for a month, 3 months, we know that 98% of people who lose weight gain it back within 5 years. So they hop on one of these diets, they're successful at it for a short period of time, and then they gain all the weight back because they aren't able to adhere to it. It's not sustainable. It's not something that they can stick to. So, really important to keep in mind, if weight loss is your goal, don't look to the trendy diet to do that. Think about, what can I do to modify the way that I eat so that it's a bit healthier, that it puts me into a calorie deficit, but is also attainable, sustainable, something I can adhere to over the long term.
Yeah. Are you trying to lose weight for a specific date, or are you trying to just lose weight overall for the rest of your life? And that's exactly it. There's a difference between something being effective in the short term and something being sustainable. If you want to try something because you really have an important date that you want to be a certain weight for some reason, then pretty much any of these diets are going to be effective because of that extreme calorie deficit that they put you in. But one, I would just caution that in general, because I think unless that you have a really good reason for that, it just is promoting unhealthy eating habits. And at the end of the day, you're not only going to more than likely put on the weight that you lost, but because of these unhealthy habits, these yo-yo habits that you're developing, a lot of times people go even further over the deep end and end up gaining more weight. So, yeah, and that you're right. This is pretty much something that you can say across the board for all these diets. So, without further ado, the first one that we're going to talk about is keto slash the low carb diet. So this is something that personally I was a big fan of when I first heard about it. Um, as someone that likes to eat a lot of meat and a lot of fatty foods to begin with, this one just immediately was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm just going to eat a bunch of bacon and eggs all day. Let's do it. And there are definitely some potential benefits because of the ketogenic diet. Um, but man, this is a tough one long term.
Yeah, really tough. I actually did this for a period of time and felt okay on it, but I went to the doctor and my cholesterol was through the roof. My blood sugar was higher than it had ever been. So there can certainly be some short-term weight loss benefits to this, right? You're cutting out carbs. You're cutting out an entire macronutrient group. And so as such, you're going to restrict your calories significantly. What the ketogenic diet is really promoting is you get rid of the carbs. So then your body has to look to other places for fuel. And so it turns to fat for fuel. And then when the fat's broken down for energy, these molecules called ketones are created. And those ketones are what become the main source of energy for the cells in your body. Um, there is no magical, you know, impact that you get from generating ketones in your body. I think these things are marketed and talked about, like going into ketosis is going to like cure all your health um, quals and concerns, and that's just not. There's no evidence to support that. There is some evidence through studies to show that it can be beneficial for seizure prevention, which in that case you're working with a nutritionist who's supporting you through what sort of food you should be eating. A little bit with treating diabetes, right? Like if you're cutting out carbs, you're cutting out sugar, and blood sugar regulation is the challenge with diabetes, and then a few different types of cancer. And again, it's really effective for short-term weight loss, but are you gonna cut out carbs for the rest of your life? Like, sure, you do this for a few months, you cut out a whole food group, you're gonna lose some weight, but then what?
Yeah. I mean, so the potential pros with this one, I mean, like you said, the weight loss because of the calorie deficit is, is I guess number one. Um, Number two, I think some people really do appreciate something that is really simple. And so, like, an extreme version of this diet would be like the carnivore diet, where you are pretty much eating only animal-based foods. And, for some people, just having that strict guideline, takes a lot of the decision making out of it. And, really does make things super simple. Um, Another thing that people claim is a reduction in inflammation and the potential to cure some autoimmune conditions. Um, Along with even, like improved digestion. But at the end of the day, those things are a lot more anecdotal than they have science behind them. I know if I've had a heavy weekend of eating steaks and burgers and bacon and eggs and all that stuff, I know my stomach is not feeling great at the end of that. And so I know a lot of people would probably feel the opposite, where they would probably have some more digestive issues. And also, if you're just eating proteins and fats, where's your fiber coming from?
Yeah.
So there is a lack of fiber. There's certainly um, a potential lack of nutrients. It's just this falls short in so many factors. But I think the biggest one is that you become a real pain in the ass to go out to dinner with. Um, it just like it sucks to, have to eat with somebody that, won't share some french fries with you.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably say that again and again and again throughout the course of this
It's
podcast,
gonna
but,
be a
like,
theme.
these things are so restrictive that there's no flexibility built into them, so, like, you you almost have to, like, pack your lunch, pack your dinner, cook everything in your home, and that just makes it tough to go about life. Um, so, yeah, I mean, sure, you can go to the restaurant and order your steak and broccoli, um, but you're gonna be staring at the guy who's enjoying his mashed potatoes and probably, uh, wishing you had some on your plate as well.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so flip that coin to the exact opposite side, and what do you get? You get vegans or plant-based, plant-based diets. So this is another one. Obviously, the number one pro is going to be the weight loss because of a calorie restriction. So if you are somebody that's used to eating meat, and you cut that out of your diet, then odds are you're going to be eating less food, because it is a lot harder to eat 500 calories of broccoli versus 500 calories of a ribeye. So you're going to lose weight because of caloric restriction. A lot of people are attracted to a diet like this because of the potential heart health benefits, reduction in hypertension, diabetes, certain types of cancers. Um, and it's all fine and good there. Um, but man, this is another one that just feels tough to do long term. And I know a handful of people that are committed to doing, plant-based diets long term, and they all tend to suffer from very similar issues.
Yeah, I mean, meat is the most nutrient dense food on planet Earth. So if you cut out meat altogether and you're not really calculated in your veganism, you will absolutely suffer from some nutrient deficiencies. It is really hard to get B12, vitamin D, iodine, iron, calcium, zinc, omega-3 fatty acids from plant-based foods. So,
It's possible, but man, it's really challenging. You have to be very, very regimented with your diet. There's very
very
little
regimented
flexibility
with the
here.
diet or really, really calculated with your supplementation.
Right.
So, if you're doing this for ethical reasons, religious reasons, that's great. Like that, those would be reasons that I would encourage somebody to follow something like a vegan diet. But if you're doing it for health benefits or for weight loss, I wouldn't recommend it. I don't think it's a good place to turn. You can certainly lose, as you noted, weight in the short term. You're going to be eating a lot of fiber, so you're going to be heavily satiated, but you're really missing out on a lot of critical nutrients by cutting out animal-based foods altogether.
Yeah, and if you're somebody that does exercise regularly, if you strength train, and you need your body needs recovery, it's really, really challenging to hit your protein totals. I mean, if you're somebody that works with us, I mean, know that we have one of the first things we do is have people just start to pay attention to the amount of protein that they're getting on a daily basis. And uh it's hard even with animal products sometimes to hit those protein numbers. If you're removing those altogether, it becomes a really big challenge. And you also have to be concerned about what types of protein sources you're getting, because the nice thing about meat is that it has all of the essential amino acids that are required to
Mhm.
make muscle, whereas there is no plant product in the world that I am aware of that is a complete source of those amino acids. And so you need to make sure that you're getting enough of different types of plant-based proteins to make sure that you're getting that full amino acid profile. So that puts a little bit more onus on the individual to make sure that you're getting enough of those different types of plant-based proteins.
Yeah, probably the biggest con with veganism is that you can't go to Culver's and enjoy a double butter burger with cheese with the works.
Mhm.
So, I mean,
Yeah, that sucks.
that sucks.
But also, and I also would think that if you just take a look, so right now, nowadays, there are plant-based everything out there, plant-based burger patties, plant-based cream cheese, you name it, there is a plant-based alternative for it. Um, and because of the marketing geniuses out there, our brains have been tricked to thinking that plant-based means healthier. Uh, and if you look at the ingredients of things that are plant-based versus their, animal-based original counterparts, you'll see that the ingredients that they have had to put in there to make it similar are all over the place. That they're making something that can be very simple into something very complicated because they want to market a product that looks and sounds and might taste a little bit like an animal product. So plant based is certainly not always healthier, and a lot of times those added products can really do a number on people's guts. So that's just another thing that you got to be careful of.
Yeah, dude. I mean, like a bag of Skittles is plant-based,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's totally just a marketing term. And I think aiming for more plant-based foods, more plant foods in your diet is a good ambition.
Totally.
But 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 solely eating plant and plant-based foods, probably not a great idea for your health um, or for sustainable weight loss.
Yeah. All right. The next one, oh, the next one's fun. It's paleo. So you and I were talking. I just wanted to make sure that I before the show that I had the right understanding of what the paleo diet is. So this is basically like our caveman forefathers, like how they ate. The last healthy humans out there. They had it right. So this is the diet that they would have eaten.
Yeah, so it emphasizes leaner meats, fish, veggies, fruits, nuts, and then it restricts dairy, whole grains, and legumes. Um, Spoiler alert, the lean meats, fish, veggies, fruits, and nuts that we eat today are nothing like what our ancestors ate.
Yeah.
So, even if that's your ambition for doing this, like life is very different now. Um, so I get that it's just trying to align with the way we used to eat, but we'll never be able to truly achieve that. And again, like the studies will show you this can work for weight loss. But again, it's because we're cutting out entire food groups, dairy, whole grains, and legumes. And so because of that, we're likely to restrict our calories. Therefore, people are going to lose weight on this diet. But again, is it something you can adhere to over the long term? Is it sustainable? And oftentimes we find, again, that it's not. Um,
Well, I mean, not if we're gonna go out to dinner together, not a chance.
yeah, exactly.
Like,
Exactly, man. Like,
what?
what's a steak without butter? Like, what's a,
Right.
yeah, I mean, and it, all of these things are so restrictive, which I think is kind of a thread and theme throughout all of this, which makes all of them really hard to adhere to for a long period of time. They're just not sustainable. Not to
Yeah.
mention, like, to really be paleo, you essentially have to cook every single meal in your kitchen, like from scratch. So think about the
Right.
time that it takes just to do that. I mean, that's really tough on a person as well. There's some health benefits to doing this, right? Like is it a healthier way of eating? Maybe to some
Totally.
degree. Like they
Yeah.
show risk reduction in risk factors for heart disease. Um, but again, hard to follow, hard to stick to, not flexible, not fun.
Oh, no fun at all.
Again, do you want to go out to dinner with somebody that's on the paleo diet?
Yeah, if you can't have ice cream, what are we doing here? Like, you were born in a time in the same time that ice cream exists.
Yeah. Life got
Like,
better.
oh my god.
Take
I
advantage of
like,
it.
it'd be it'd be terrible. Like, that would be, an awful way to live your life.
And I mean,
Um,
it is restricting some things that are healthy. Like whole
sure.
grains are healthy, legumes are
Mhm.
healthy, great sources of fiber. Dairy can be really healthy if you tolerate it. So
Yeah.
again, it's another thing where just why, like what are we doing here?
Right. The next one is time restricted eating, or and one form of time restricted eating, and probably the term that gets thrown around most with this is intermittent fasting. So, with time restricted eating, there are a ton of different variations on how you can do it. There are absolutely no limitations on the types of food you can eat. Where this is more around when you're eating and how often you're eating.
Yeah, I think probably the most common one is 16/8
Hmm.
or some variation of that. So you'll restrict from eating for 16 hours a day, and then you've got an 8-hour window to eat. And in that 8-hour window, you can eat whatever you want. Again, we see studies that show us that people over the short term lose weight when following some sort of time restricted eating or intermittent fasting. Again, because you're probably going to eat less if you're eating um, less often. But there are a lot of people who abuse this, right? So
Oh yeah.
you have this shortened eating window. I think it provides this false sense of security that because you're only eating for 8 hours a day, you can eat whatever the heck you want. And so oftentimes it's really unhealthy because people will just use that excuse to eat everything and anything. And in that shorter window of time, you now have less time to ensure that you're getting your micronutrient requirements. So
Right.
there's nutrition deficiency risks here as well, because if you're not calculated about what you're eating in that 8-hour window, you may not be getting enough of those critical micronutrients.
Yeah. Will actually say that during the week, I actually prefer to do time restricted eating. As a snacker, I feel like it really helps with, just cutting down on the unnecessary snacks for me. So and I also know that I operate better if I can hold off on my first meal a little bit. If I can just go with coffee and with water and coffee early in the morning, and then after my morning work is completed, then I like to sit down and have my first meal of the day. Usually that tends to be around like 10 or 11 o'clock, and I find that that really helps with my energy levels, and also just making sure that I'm not it cuts down on the cravings a little bit for me. But one thing that I found when I first started switching to that was, exactly like you said, which was as soon as it came time to eat, they'd be like, "All right, what can I have?" And you start out with, a really nice, salad and some protein and everything, but because it's your feeding window, you're looking around in the cupboard, you're looking for a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it is a really easy way to become a little bit gluttonous. And especially one of the more trendy versions of time restricted eating is this one meal a day thing, where you shrink that down even more so into just one big ass meal where you're supposed to get all of your macronutrients, all of your micronutrients, all of your fiber. And while that might work for some people, it is really simple. It can be flexible because you can have that meal at any time of the day, whenever it's most convenient for you. It really does promote some unhealthy eating habits. And if you're anybody that that has suffered from eating disorders, or it's something that you just don't have the most healthy relationship with foods, I really caution restricting your food intake like this.
I kind of did this by accident for quite a while because I'm like you. I typically don't really like to eat till maybe 10 a.m. Um, but I was for a long time trying to gain weight to build muscle. And it became very clear to me that in order to do that, I had to get to a certain amount of calories over the course of a day. And by waiting to eat until 10 a.m. to have my first meal, I didn't have the time in the day to get in the calories that I needed to achieve that goal. So if you're a person who's not so focused on weight loss, but rather general health and or you're in the gym and you're trying to pack on some muscle, that would be a reason to stay far away from this. And I still kind of now I'm more in the maintenance mode. Um, Prefer to wait, till I've had my cup of coffee and maybe gone through my email and journaled a bit. But yeah, it can be tough to get to your calorie goal if building is a goal and not weight loss. If you're restricting your window for eating.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So this next one here is Whole 30, which this was one that I've heard it tossed around a bunch, but it's not something that I've ever well, I've never tried Whole 30 specifically, but from my understanding of it, it is an elimination diet that focuses on whole foods, eliminating sugar, alcohol, grains, legumes, soy, and dairy. And then after 30 days, you start to introduce them back into your diet one at a time. And the whole thought is that this is going to help identify food sensitivities that you may have.
I think that's one way it can be used. It's marketed as a 30-day reset. So
Hmm.
I don't hate this one because I do think certainly sugar and alcohol, there's some benefit to eliminating those from your diet for a period of time to kind of reset. Um, but if you're gonna, and I like that it's very time bound and specific, but I think we know that a lot of times restriction leads to binging. So if this is something you're going to pursue as a reset or to try to eliminate food sensitivities or whatever, you got to really be cautious and clear on what the plan is coming out of that 30-day period of time so that you don't just you know teeter seesaw to the other side of the
Break
puzzle.
your fast with a double Butterburger deluxe
That would be
and
me, man.
onion rings.
That would be me.
Yeah. I mean, that is the thing, is the thing about this diet is, well, I mean, it's more of, like you said, it's this 30-day reset. It does have, I mean, especially if you're somebody that suffers from some chronic illness, some inflammation, some, gut issues, this can be a really good way to start to identify some of the foods that you might be a little bit more sensitive to. But I really caution anybody to just try this on their own. This really feels like something that should be done under the supervision of a dietitian or doctor. Um, because there is a lot of nuance to introducing foods back into your diet, for eliminating them for 30 days to begin with, and then introducing them back into your diet. And like, not everybody is capable of interpreting the things that they're feeling. So if this is something that you're interested in, I don't know if there are like Whole 30 coaches out there, but I would find, somebody that specializes in nutrition for sure, to help you with that process, and coach you along through it. Because, man, I could just see so many potential things going wrong, if somebody was just doing this on their own.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got gut problems and you think there's a food sensitivity issue, there's a number of different kind of diets out there, low FODMAP, where you can kind of try to work through some of those things. But if you're dealing with those issues, you should be working with a doctor. And if your doctor isn't getting to the root of the problem, maybe look to functional medicine. Um, they sometimes have a better understanding of how this things works and don't just kind of umbrella diagnose IBS and move on. But I think you're absolutely right. Like there has to be some support and some structure to this journey because it's difficult to solve on your own.
Yeah, for sure. All right, last one, a last fad diet that we have here. This one, out of all of them, makes the most sense to me. It's the Mediterranean diet. So, um, big emphasis on fruits and veggies, whole grains, big bean fan, olive oil, and then a little bit of red meat. So, um, this one really does seem you know, to be the most realistic out of all of the diets. But, I think that's because there is a bunch of flexibility in it.
Yeah, I mean, it basically just prioritizes really healthy food. It's not
Right.
super restrictive. Um, and so for that reason, I think it's a good diet. Like if you like to eat this way and you can stick to this, that's great. I think a Mediterranean flex diet where like you give yourself an opportunity to maybe veer off the path every so often would be even better. Because I think that the main con here is again, it's just you're, to do this, you basically have to cook fresh food all of the time, and that's just difficult. It's time consuming. It's not
Mhm.
convenient.
Yeah,
And
and
so,
it's
well,
really not, as it's not totally realistic for the majority of people.
right,
I mean, that's the big thing, is these systems that we have in place, we should be able to complete them on our worst days and our worst weeks. Not, we think about what we're able to accomplish on our best ones, but when you're having just that rough week, when work is stressing you out, and things are just are challenging, or life is just really busy. What can you still adhere to? and, keep you grounded. And so, that's where, something like this Mediterranean diet, as long as you just have those guidelines in place, when we have dinner, the majority of the plate is going to be, different colored fruits and veggies. There's going to be a whole grain, there's going to be some protein. And how you kind of customize that on daily, weekly basis is up to you. But it really is important that if you're going to make these changes, you think about, what you can actually stick to in real life, not just when things are going, things are going really well for you.
Yeah, 100%. So what do you recommend?
Well, Dylan, I think that, something that you and I really do see eye to eye on is balance. And one thing that, you know, we here at the Better Basics crew, one thing that we really think it works well is that 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time you're eating whole foods, and that can come from animals, that can come from plants, it can be fruits, it can be veggies, it can be um it just eating that real food 80% of the time, trying to cut back on the packaged and the processed foods, trying to like eat those, just kind of just the feel good snacks, trying to cut back on those less. And then, something that you or have said pretty much every show, prioritizing protein and fiber. And if you can do those three things along with an emphasis on hydration, just drinking a shitload of water, I think you're going to be in better shape than the majority of people.
Yeah, I think, these fad diets, these off the shelf kind of diets are pretty much universally trash. I think you should really be thinking about what works and can work for you. If you require some support and coaching around that, there are resources for that. We provide that. Um, at the end of the day, you should really be giving some thought to what is your goal with nutrition. Um, and it's probably different for everybody. Some people want to lose weight, some people just want to ensure that they're healthy and getting enough of their micronutrient needs. Some people are trying to gain weight and build muscle. So there's this spectrum of goals related to nutrition. And whatever you choose should be in alignment with that and something that's sustainable, something that you can adhere to. That looks like exactly what you're saying, Matt, right? Like, let's get it right 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 times. Let's leave some room for, some flexibility with that diet as well. Life is tough, it gets in the way sometimes. Um, and really ensure that we're prioritizing, getting some veggies on the plate, eating some fruit, getting our fiber, our protein. And it can really be that simple. And it should be. And at some point, once you've met your goal or once you get, in a good rhythm or routine with your nutrition, it really just becomes very intuitive, right? Like I don't any longer think about this stuff so much. I have built good nutritional habits. Sometimes I make a smoothie with packed full of micronutrients. Sometimes I go to Jimmy John's and get a sub. And the only thing I'm ever really thinking about is, am I getting it right most of the time?
Yeah. And I know I've given this tip before on the show. If you're someone like me that feels like your leafy greens just get in the way of the good, delicious things on your plate, just do what I do. And that is you buy a tub of whatever greens you like, spinach, arugula, mixed, doesn't matter. Put in your fridge. And whenever you go in there to grab something else, you just pop it open and you just grab a handful out. And you just get little bits of just salad. It's like it's like an unjuiced, salad shot. All you're just taking these little salad shots all day long.
You still haven't proved to us that this is something that
Okay,
should
fine.
actually do.
All right, that's fair, but I highly recommend it if you struggle with the greens, just convince your body you're doing something really good for it and just take those little salad shots.
Dude, a handful of arugula after, like, a high-fat meal
Oh,
is actually really good for digestion too.
yeah, I bet.
So, little tip there as well.
All right. I love that. And I love arugula. A little spicy, a little bitter. Really, really nice. Um, all right. I think we nailed that. Let's move on to the question and answer portion of the show. And this one actually goes in line, kind of with the broader, nutrition topics of the day. So, Dylan, you brought this one to the table. So, why don't you introduce it?
Yeah, so the question is, what's the difference between processed and ultra processed foods? And we throw these terms around a lot, right? Like prioritize whole foods and limit your intake of processed foods, limit your intake of ultra processed foods. Well, there's it's a good question because there's kind of some nuance to this. And I think we kind of use them interchangeably, but actually they don't really mean the same thing. So do you want to maybe address
Sure.
what we mean here?
I'll take my best stab at it here, and then you fill in the cracks. So, um, processed foods are any sort of food product that has been altered from its natural state. So, whether it is like a process of canning, freezing, even baking, anything like that is a processed food. So, canned fruits and veggies, canned fish, yogurt, cheese, pasta, these are all what we would consider, processed foods. Whereas ultra processed foods are basically they just take substances extracted from foods and turn them into something delicious. So you think about really anything in the chip aisle, energy bars, breakfast cereals, like frozen ready, freezer meals, those types of things. Those are ultra processed. And the thing with those, they tend to have little to no actual like whole foods in them. And there are a ton of additives, which, that can lead to digestive issues. But also really these types of foods, these ultra processed foods are designed to be addicting. They're designed to be hyper palatable. Um, and so they are designed for you to eat more, but and this is the kind of the pro with them is they're also designed to be super shelf stable. So there is that value in them. So I'm not going to say that ultra processed foods are inherently evil. But certainly the marketing wings of some of these ultra processed food distributors and companies are preying on on children and people's weaknesses for cheesy, delicious snacks.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, there's a spectrum to this, right? Like you could buy a watermelon at the grocery store, and as soon as you cut it into slices, you're theoretically processing that food.
Right.
So I think you covered it very well. If you have a watermelon and you rip it apart with your hands, it's a whole food. If you slice it, you're processing it a bit. If you put it in a blender, you've processed it a bit more. If it turns into a popsicle in the freezer aisle, it's now an ultra processed food. And so when we say I think sometimes you hear people say limit your intake of processed food. And there's some truth to that, but really what we want to be most cautious of is the ultra processed foods. So you want to eat the whole food in its natural form as much as you possibly can. There are many processed foods that are quite healthy for you. So you shouldn't steer away from them altogether. And to your point, Matt, like a lot of times it just has to do with like the fact that we live in 2024 and we can get these things into more convenient forms of being able to eat them. So that's not necessarily bad either. Um, but yeah, it's really the ultra processed stuff that we want to be cautious of. There's certainly merit to it. You're right. It's convenient, shelf stable, etc. But a lot of times we're talking about things that it's sort of like, could you make it in your home? Like, that's sort of where it becomes ultra processed. If
Yeah,
it's something
did
you
it
can't
require a lab?
did it require a lab to make it,
Yeah.
or some genius food scientist to come up with the recipe to do it? That's where it starts to get into the ultra processed front. And to a point you made earlier, these plant-based meats are ultra processed foods. Like,
Oh, hell yeah, they are.
um, so that's something to keep in mind. Like, certainly marketed as healthy, but a lot of times we're talking about, you know, soy-based foods that are probably doused in pesticides and herbicides, processed with all sorts of different things you can't name,
Yeah,
to
gums,
come up with something
emulsifiers,
that's
things that bind them together
right.
and, make them look the way that they do and have the certain mouth feels that they do. This is all constructed, yeah, by food scientists to be hyper palatable. And in regards to these, plant-based, quote unquote meat products, they're designed to mimic meat. And I guess I would just challenge anybody to, if you need something to taste like a burger that bad, don't you think maybe there is something good about the burger, just in its original form?
Yeah, man.
Um, so, yeah, again, we're not telling anybody to eliminate anything entirely from their diet, but if you are just looking for just these kind of like blanket, you know, quote unquote like unhealthy foods, the ultra processed ones are a pretty good place to start.
You bet.
All right, that brings us to the final segment of the day. It is the I Lift a sad song of the week. Dylan, it is my turn, and I might have discovered something here. I showed this one to you before the show because this is a band that I never heard of them before. Um, and they have some straight up sad jams right in our pocket. Um, it's from the Front Bottoms, and the song is called Twin Size Mattress.
Yeah, dude, I have never heard of them either. You asked me to give it a listen before we started, and at first I was like, "This is a nice tune that I would enjoy," and then maybe 30 seconds in or so, the instruments come in, and I wanted to run down to the gym.
All right, cool. I'm
So,
glad we're on the same page.
this is
Um,
fit well on the playlist.
it's good. It's nice. And they have a sweet Tiny Desk concert that you and everybody else should check out. So that's it, everybody. We appreciate you listening. Thank you all so much. Happy 4th of July, and we'll see you next time.